everybody. It's nice to see you again. My name is Sharon Chaden-Glass, and this is the Idea Networking session where we bring instructional designers together with educators and share stories about how we got into this field of instructional design. This is actually the 12th time that I've held one of these sessions, so it's super exciting. And today we did have 3 speakers, but one of our speakers had a family emergency, so she was not able to come. But we do have Mitchell and Amy Jazienicki, and both of them are going to be sharing their stories about how they got into instructional design. Anne, do you want to go first?
Okay, so I think I'm supposed to talk about how I came to be as an instructional designer.
Yes, ma'am.
And basically, I started out with a business degree in transportation and logistics, then transitioned into education, picked up a master's and a specialist in teaching fields. Then I got my doctorate in leadership, stayed in public education for about 17 years. I got involved with school safety, dropped out to take a hiatus to go get some training to work on the emergency management, law enforcement side, since I was writing school safety plans, and felt like I needed a little bit of background with some expertise to do that. And then 2008 hit. And if you remember 2008, that's when we all decided we weren't going to quite retire when we thought we were going to. So I had to find something different to do other than go back in school systems, because they were cutting back right and left, even though there was teacher shortage that had been predicted. So I went to work with SAIC for FEMA down in Anniston, Alabama, using the instructional knowledge I had with the law enforcement background to write federal courses for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear events. After Anniston, I came back and started my own business in Georgia for a little while, where I wrote the training and did a lot of customized stuff for Honda, Kia, Solo Cup, Tincotti, several different manufacturers there in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Then I moved up to Chattanooga with Chattanooga Community College, Chattanooga State, and was assigned to Volkswagen to document. It really wasn't to develop curriculum, but to document a curriculum that had been approved between the Tennessee Board of Regents, which is our governing body of colleges, and the German Chamber of Commerce for a new 3-year mechatronics apprenticeship program. So after 2 years, I had that documented in about 1,500 pages apiece. And I moved up to the University of Tennessee and started working on federal courses with a group up here through the university for the FDA, the CDC, the Department of State, some others. And I kept that job until late 2019 and decided I was ready to do something a little bit different. So I changed over with their College of Social Work, which has an independent functioning service agency. And I'm embedded with an IT group now as a training coordinator. And in 2 years, we've gone from 2 trainers to, we anticipate 6 in the fall. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of how I've ended up where I am sitting in this chair today. So later on, I'll be glad to answer any questions if you want to know what happened. So, and I'm honored to be here talking today. Thank you.
Yeah, and as people are talking, make sure you write down your questions so you have them ready for when we go into breakout rooms. And breakout rooms will be named after the speaker, so either me or Anne or Amy. So if there's one of us in particular that you're interested in asking questions to, you can select the breakout room to do that. Amy, are you ready?
Okay, hi everyone. So my full name is Amy Jazienicki. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. And right now I work for an accounting firm as a learning experience designer. So you might have heard that title flown around a little bit, like instructional designer, learning experience designer. Is there a difference? If there is it significant? LXDs are really just kind of the 2.0 of IDs, really. But at the end of the day, we do a lot of the same stuff. Oh, hi, someone from Vancouver. That's awesome. So I'll try to give an abridged version because there's kind of a history, even though I'm still relatively young, I guess. So I had started my career in a completely different direction. So I started in public policy and got my first master's degree in that. And I kind of inadvertently discovered that I liked training. So I was given this huge project of putting together training for new software that was coming in. And I worked with a lot of people that were much older than me and very much technophobes. So they said, you do this, you teach us how to work the magic. So that was when I first learned that I actually really liked professional development and adult education. So after a couple of years of doing that sort of work in the public sector, I got the itch to travel. So I got my TESOL certificate. So that's teaching English, what's the acronym again? Teaching English to speakers of other languages, something like that. It's been a while. Yeah, I got it. It's been a while. So I used that to go and teach in Vietnam. So I taught children and I also taught adults on the side. Then I went to China and focused solely on adults, so business and general English learners. And then I transitioned over, another Torontonian, yay. I transitioned over to Germany. So I went over to Europe and got more into corporate training, and I started getting independent clients as an e-learning developer. So that was kind of my first really sinking my teeth into kind of the e-learning side of things, not just being a teacher or a trainer, but kind of getting a sense of a company's LMS and how to work with it and how to design more interactive and creative solutions. Then, of course, the pandemic hit. So I was still in Germany at the time, and I had to come back to Canada, kind of rushed. And I wanted to continue being freelance. So I started up a business where I was solely doing e-learning and instructional design. So most of the connections I made were through LinkedIn. I just really leveraged my website and my LinkedIn profile so that people could find me. So I wasn't doing as much of the work finding them. And yeah, I had a really great kind of repertoire and portfolio of work that I was able to do. And then I was kind of found by my current firm. So they said, yeah, we know you're self-employed, but would you want to come back to corporate and come work for us 9 to 5? So that's what I'm doing now. So a lot of the learning materials I build now are for accountants, for HR, onboarding. So you name it, in the corporate sphere, we do it. Yeah, so that's my professional experience in a nutshell.
We have plenty of time, so I can kind of give a abridged version of how I got into this field too. So as Amy said, yes, it's teachers of English to speakers of other languages. That was what I went and got my master's degree in. I finished my master's degree in 2006 and had a ridiculously difficult time getting a job. I had lots of part-time jobs. Everyone wanted to give me a part-time job. I'm like, I can't. I mean, even with 4 part-time jobs, I'm not really making a ton of money here. So eventually I actually went back to school to get a TESOL teaching license so I could teach in K-12. And I finished that in 2011. So I had taught as an adjunct for 5 years in higher education and couldn't get a job. So I went and got a TESOL teaching license. And then when I finished that, I couldn't get hired because I wasn't licensed in math or science or reading or middle grades or anything. So I couldn't get a job. And at the same time, in 2012, higher education started hiring again. We had all these international students coming in. And so finally I got a full-time job in higher education, which is what I left. And sorry, I cannot talk to you right now. Sorry, that's my 4-year-old. Mom life. What was I talking about?
You got your
Part-time
in TESOL, so you can be more competitive in the job.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
And that was after you went
and a full-time job in 2012 in higher ed, which you really loved.
Yeah, so I finally got hired as a full-time ESL instructor in a university, and did that until I had my second child. And after I had my second child, I was like, I can't keep living like this, all my evenings gone, all my weekends gone, and then like getting to the summer and being like, everyone just leave me alone, and then being burnt out for 5 or 6 weeks, and then being like, oh God, I've got to go back and do it again. And I kept telling myself like, oh, summer, it's so great. And I'm like, but is it really, if I'm just so mentally tired that I can't even do anything that I enjoy? So I started thinking about, and at the same time, like, enrollment in higher education was not doing, for international student enrollment, was not doing great because of a lot of factors. And so I started seeing the numbers go down, and I was like, I gotta have an escape plan. So I started, I just went into Glassdoor and Googled learning education and found out about this position called instructional designer. And I was like, I can do that. That's like what I'm doing now, except it doesn't involve actually teaching face to face. So I was like, I need to like look into that and see what I can do to become more qualified for that. And the university where I was teaching offered, one of the benefits of it was I had free tuition. So I did technology enhanced learning certificate in their graduate school, and started looking for jobs in April 2019. And it took me until August 2019 to get another job, but just in time, so I didn't have to go back for another school year. And it was really hard for me to let go of the teaching lifestyle because I loved it so much. I really loved making a difference in my students' lives. And I mean, if I didn't love it, why would I have stayed with it as long as I did, making hardly any money at all? And there was part of me that's like, oh, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And my husband was like, they'll be fine. There will be somebody to teach. You're not, it's not like when you're irreplaceable. And that made me sad at the beginning. And he's like, anybody can be replaced. You shouldn't feel like that's a sad thing. You should find comfort in that so you can go do something that is right for you now. And he was right. He was absolutely right about that, because in a lot of ways, like my own personal and mental health was really suffering, because I was like, I have to be there for my kids. I have to be there for my husband. I have to be there for this and that. And I can't get, everyone can't have 5% of me. It's more important. It's important for me to give as much as I can. I can't give everybody 100%, but I knew that I was being stretched way too thin. So that is kind of what brought me to the job that I am in now. I'm currently in media production for a community college. And as I was telling Anne earlier, it's different than instructional designer, because I'm not actually creating the courses that teachers are going to use. Instead, I'm working with a faculty member and finding out what their needs are for media, and then figuring out how we meet that need. So it could be video, it could be audio, it could be interactive graphics, it could be using tools within our learning management system. So that's kind of what my job is right now. I think I've talked too long, so I'll just be quiet. And I'm the last person, so we get to go to breakout rooms and just have an extra long time talking to each other. So I think that that's exciting. Before we move on to whole Q&A, I want to make sure that people know the next time that we have one of these. The next session that I will have is Tuesday, August 3rd, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. In general, I'm going to try to keep them to the first Tuesday of the month if possible. And so now I'm just going to open up the floor and we'll take questions. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat and I'll try to pay attention to that.
I have a question for anybody in the panel, any three of you. What is something that you enjoy most about, I guess, instructional design? So I think of all three people are instructional designers now, or your current role. Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing for me, I've been able to travel and see things. As I was telling David, I've ridden in the caboose or the engine of a train to help them write some safety stuff. I've spent months in Washington, D.C. working on food safety courses and traveling to farms to make photographs for different kinds of curriculum material. So that's, to me, been one of the most enjoyable parts, is getting to see a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have gotten to see. And the other is just knowing that you've written something that may make a difference. We did a food safety course for India, and those folks kept sending us little emails that said, thank you for showing us how not to die from eating your food, and that sounds what, but that they were very sincere about it. It was very meaningful, those kinds of things.
Amy, what would you say to that most rewarding thing?
I would say probably when you can turn content that otherwise seems tedious or boring into something people remember and really enjoy. So, I mean, I work for an accounting firm, so it's not always the most exciting content in the world, but it's really great to hear when accountants who are very busy, you know, most of the time, and then they have to do some kind of mandatory training and they not only don't hate it, they also rave about how interactive and engaging it was. You know, so when you can build in like case studies or include a story, you know, just anything to make it a lot more immersive and relevant and something they can apply in their work, that's kind of like the same rewarding feeling I got when I was a teacher. You know, it's a little different, but you know, it's similar enough.
I would say that I'll repeat something I said in the breakout rooms, that for me, two things. I've really enjoyed the creativity aspect, talking with someone and being like, what is the issue that you're having? And then trying to figure out a way to use media to solve that need. Secondly, I just have to say, having been burnt out from 13 years of teaching, the pace, it's so much better. It's so much better. Even on the most challenging day, I'm like, oh, I'm only being used at 70% capacity instead of 100% over and over and over and over again without really a thank you. I've really enjoyed the pace that I've been working at, and I feel like my boss is really protective of our sanity. So he kind of looks at who's on the team and is like, okay, well, let's spread this out, call people in so you're not the only one working on it. And I feel like there's at least in the position I'm in right now, I don't know what it's like for everybody, but I can say that there's a lot of making sure that people are not given too much to do, which if you've been a teacher, you were like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, there are jobs like that.
And it's not considered lazy.
No.
You can sincerely work at that capacity and no guilting or none of that.
Well, Christine, like I said, I had the guilt. I was like, I don't know if this is okay. But, you know, after being there for almost 2 years now, it's like, okay, well, it's still good and they still want me to keep coming in. So
that sounds surreal.
There is a psychology that once you've been at that pace, I taught middle school for 17 years, but it's been a while. So I can only imagine what the last year has been like for those of you still in the classroom. But once you do move into a more reasonable, normal work amount per week or whatever, you feel like I'm not doing enough, and you almost feel like I got to find something else to do. I'm not doing enough, you know, and it takes a while to adjust.
Mm-hmm. In a good way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
In a more sustainable, like, this job isn't going to kill me way.
And so you could actually, like, I've heard about this, you could actually sort of work during work hours, not nights or weekends.
Well, I know, like, once you leave, like, you leave work at work.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, I know, but it is possible.
And a lot of instructional design is work from home. So as long as you're making your meetings and getting your jobs done and being there when you need to be there, there is oftentimes now some flexibility built in where you don't have to push it 8 to 5 or 9 till 6 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Work-life balance, what's that? Ha ha ha, yes.
Questions on portfolios or work samples or anything like that?
Oh, Scott was asking about what we did for portfolios. Do you want to talk any about that, Anne or Amy, if you have a portfolio? Anne?
I actually do not have a portfolio because most of everything I've ever done is so proprietary. They would not allow me to copy it without setting off alarms. So I do page captures or a partial unit capture here and there, where I've had to design processes for curriculum development. I've included those kinds of things, but I do not have an electronic portfolio as such. And I think a lot of that goes more into the instructional technology and maybe corporate expectations than it does where I'm seeing things right now. Maybe it's just an anomaly, but.
Amy, how about you? Do you have, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, yeah. So I had a portfolio when I first started instructional design, and I still do. And I would highly recommend, I was saying this in the breakout room, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself for those that were in there with me. But more than even certificates or degrees, and I say this as somebody who's getting a master's in ed tech, like your portfolio should be your number one. And especially if you're looking for corporate employers, like Anne was saying, because that's kind of the basis on which they can gauge what you're capable of doing. And so what I would recommend, oh yeah, I was just about to get to that, Christine, awesome. So what I would say is try to have a mix of different types of software or different platforms you can use. So for, again, don't take this as gospel, this is just an example. So for instance, if you work with the Articulate suite, so let's say you've got Storyline and Rise, maybe you want to have 2 or 3 samples from Storyline, 1 or 2 from Rise. And then if you have some video editing capability or production, you can do Camtasia or Adobe, whatever, or even Video Scribe if you do explainer videos, have a couple of those. I've done voiceover and audio editing, so I have a few samples of those as well. And it just kind of showcases the breadth of your skill set, right? So if you can show just enough, and with just enough variation, that employers can go in and see, oh, I can picture them using this in, say an onboarding program or for something that's more technical, then that's exactly what you want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree with David as well. You also want to, if you can provide an accompanying explanation, it doesn't have to be long, it just be a couple of sentences, like what this artifact does, what its purpose is, especially what its learning purpose is, because it can be flashy as all heck, right? And that's great. But if it doesn't serve a learning purpose, it doesn't matter how flashy it is, right? So, yeah.
All right, any final questions before we say?
Kind of on the path of portfolios, but also interview wise, I'm just curious what you all think. I've had at least one interview where they wanted me to perform or create something during the interview. Have you had interviews or experience with that, and what do you think about that?
Amy or Anne, I can pick that up, or it's up to you.
No, I was just wondering what that was, because I've never had that before. What did they ask you to create?
So it was for the Texas Workforce Commission, and it was actually just using PowerPoint, which the position wasn't going to be necessarily using PowerPoint, but of course, there's all different tools we use. And so it was on Zoom, and they had me take over their desktop, but they turned off their cameras, and I had a certain amount of time to design a lesson or program based on 2 different topics. This was a few months ago. I can't remember now what it was. I think it was like one of the ones was their first time user using a Word document, because you're helping people to get jobs in the Texas community.
One thing I would say to that is that I think, if you're going to have to go in and develop or whatever, that it's reasonable to ask for you to do a lesson or something that shows that you know how to do a learning objective, write some text, do some pictures or slides or whatever with a little, maybe a knowledge check or something, show that you know what you're doing and how to tie it all together. But there is, and I got into this with a local employer when I was looking to change jobs the last time. They wanted me to create an entire module on a learning topic, and I knew some other folks that were applying, so we went through that exercise one time, and none of us got the job, and we did exactly what they were asking for, and we knew the work was good, but for some reason we felt like they ended up with a really good course on this topic, but they really weren't going to hire anyone because they never did seem to take the job posting off of, it was actually on LinkedIn also, unfortunately. But just be aware, if they're wanting a whole module or a whole course as a demonstration unit, let that, do a gut check on that. But it's not at all unreasonable. But I've had better luck looking at what we're calling portfolios or work samples than I have with asking people to sit down. Now, I will ask somebody to sit down and edit some written text, because I need to know that they know the conventions of the English language in my case. English, maybe other languages where you are, because if they can't write in English, I don't want to, as their manager or supervisor, I don't want to have to go in and rewrite their work for them.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up. Go to sleep. I just want to make sure that we thank Anne and Amy for coming and sharing their experiences with us and talking in breakout rooms. So thank you so much, ladies. I'm really glad that you were able to come today. Thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you next time.